Do not make a scene, Danielle. The plane is leaving with or without you. Logan Pierce said it through the glass, one hand holding his phone, the other resting on the open cabin door. Danielle Monroe stood inside the private terminal with a small suitcase beside her and a paper cup of coffee cooling between her fingers. For one stunned second, she thought he was joking. This was supposed to be their anniversary trip to Charleston, a quiet weekend Logan claimed would help them fix whatever had been breaking between them. Then Sloane Mercer stepped onto the plane behind him, carrying a leather briefcase instead of vacation luggage. She wore the polished smile Danielle had seen at too many company dinners, the smile of a woman who already knew she had won. Logan. Danielle moved toward the security door. What is she doing here? He did not answer. A member of the ground crew gently blocked her path. Outside, Logan looked down at his phone as Danielle's call appeared on the screen. He declined it while staring directly at her. That hurt more than if he had looked away. Her phone vibrated a moment later. This marriage has been over for months. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. Danielle read the message twice. Her throat tightened, but no tears came. Around her, luggage wheels rolled across the tile. An espresso machine hissed behind the counter. Two pilots discussed the weather as though a woman's entire life were not being dismantled 10 feet away. The aircraft door began to close. Danielle pressed her palm to the glass. You brought me here just to leave me? Logan paused, his face almost hidden behind the tinted window. Then he turned toward Sloane. The door sealed. That was his answer. The engines came alive, low and powerful, shaking the windows of the terminal. Danielle watched the Gulf Stream pull away from the gate. She remembered every late night she had spent checking Logan's route projections, every introduction she had made, every promise that they were building Pierce Meridian Aviation together. Now he was flying away with another woman and the documents for a deal Danielle had never been meant to see. Her hand started trembling. She looked down and noticed the silver VIP wristband Logan had removed from her arm before entering security. He had smiled when he did it. They only issued one, he had said. Another lie, delivered like it was nothing. The plane turned toward the runway. Danielle slowly lifted her wedding ring, but she did not remove it. Not yet. First, she opened her contacts and found a number she had not called in 7 years. Her brother answered on the first ring. Danielle. Marcus Monroe sounded cautious. Is everything all right? She watched Logan's plane gather speed beneath the gray Georgia sky. Her chest ached, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. No, she said, but it will be. Marcus went silent. Danielle picked up her suitcase. I need you to call Rachel Coleman. Tell her to activate my voting rights, review every Blue Harbor lease, and freeze any unauthorized transfer connected to Pierce Meridian. Danny, what happened? The aircraft lifted from the runway, carrying Logan toward the future he thought he had stolen. Danielle watched until its wheels disappeared. My husband left me behind, she said. Now I need to know exactly what he plans to fly away with. Logan believed he had abandoned a powerless wife at a forgotten airport. What he did not know was that Danielle Monroe had spent 7 years hiding the name that controlled his planes, his fuel contracts, and nearly every runway he needed next. Marcus did not ask another question until a black Lincoln pulled up outside the terminal 20 minutes later. Danielle slid into the back seat with her suitcase beside her and the wedding ring still on her finger. Her brother was waiting across from her, dressed in a charcoal suit, his expression caught somewhere between relief and anger. 7 years, he said quietly. You disappear for 7 years, and the first call I get is about voting rights and aircraft leases. Danielle looked through the window as the airport faded behind them. I did not disappear. You stopped answering. Because every conversation with Dad turned into a board meeting. Marcus leaned back. And Logan was different? The question landed harder than he intended. Danielle stared at the silver band on her hand. Once, she had believed Logan Pierce was the first man who saw her without seeing the Monroe name first. They had met 7 years earlier inside a cramped conference room at a struggling regional airline in Atlanta. Danielle had been presenting a plan to save 3 unprofitable routes. Logan, then a sales director with an expensive watch and an empty bank account, had interrupted her twice. The third time, she closed her laptop and said, You can keep talking, or you can let me show you why your numbers are wrong. The room went silent. Logan smiled. Later, he found her near the vending machines and handed her a terrible cup of coffee. Nobody talks to me like that, he said. Maybe more people should. He laughed, and Danielle did too. She had not told him who her father was. She had introduced herself as Danielle Monroe, a network planning analyst from Georgia who preferred takeout dinners to charity galas. Logan seemed to love that version of her. When Pierce Meridian Aviation began as an idea scribbled across napkins in a 24-hour diner, Danielle built the first route model. She introduced Logan to a leasing contact at Blue Harbor. She spent nights reviewing fuel costs while he practiced investor pitches in their living room. "When this works," Logan told her once, kneeling beside the coffee table, "they will know we built it together." Danielle believed him. Then the company grew. Reporters called Logan a visionary. Magazine covers showed him standing beside aircraft Danielle had helped secure. Her name disappeared from the story one sentence at a time. Whenever she questioned it, Logan kissed her forehead and said, "You told me you did not want attention." She had mistaken being hidden for being protected. The Lincoln entered downtown Savannah and stopped outside a glass office building belonging to Monroe Aeronautics Group. Rachel Coleman was already waiting in the conference room with 3 folders and a laptop open. "Before we do anything," Rachel said, "you need to understand what Logan may have signed." Danielle sat down. On the screen was a draft agreement between Pierce Meridian and North Star Aviation Capital. Logan had listed himself as controlling owner of aircraft he did not own and routes he did not control. Worse, the closing was scheduled for that afternoon in Miami. Marcus folded his arms. "He is trying to sell access that belongs to us." Danielle read the final page twice. Her chest tightened when she saw the authorization line. A digital signature appeared beneath her name, one she had never given. "That is not mine," she whispered. Rachel's face hardened. Then leaving you at that airport was not the end of his plan. Danielle slowly removed her wedding ring and placed it beside the forged document. "No," she said. "It was how he planned to make sure I could not stop it." Danielle stared at the forged signature until the letters blurred. It looked almost right. The curve of the D, the narrow space between her first and last name, even the small upward stroke at the end that Logan used to tease her about. "He had access to old files," she said. Rachel nodded. "Tax forms, lease documents, banking records. Enough to copy your signature and make it look familiar." Marcus paced toward the window. "We call federal investigators now." "Not yet," Danielle said. Her brother turned. "He forged your name. And if we move too fast, he will say it was a clerical mistake. He will blame an assistant, delay the closing, and disappear behind a wall of attorneys." Rachel studied her. "What are you suggesting?" Danielle looked back at the contract. "We find out how long he has been planning this." The answer began to take shape inside her before Rachel opened the first archive. There had been signs. Danielle had simply spent months explaining them away. 6 weeks earlier, Logan had changed the password on the company portal. He told her new investors required tighter security. 3 weeks after that, he asked her to send him copies of the original Blue Harbor lease contacts because, according to him, his assistant had misplaced them. Then there was the dinner in Buckhead, when Sloane spent the entire evening speaking to Logan as if Danielle were not sitting beside him. "You would be happier away from all this," Sloane had said, swirling ice in her glass. "Some people are built for public pressure. Some are not." Logan had laughed. Danielle had waited for him to defend her. He only reached for his drink. On the drive home, she asked why Sloane knew so much about their marriage. Logan kept his eyes on the road. "You are being insecure." "I asked a question." "No, you are creating a problem because you feel left behind." At the time, Danielle had apologized. That memory now made her stomach turn. Rachel pulled up a string of internal emails. Logan had forwarded confidential leasing data to Sloane months earlier. In one message, he wrote, "Once the transfer closes, Danielle will not have standing to challenge anything." Marcus stopped pacing. He knew exactly what he was doing. Danielle read the sentence again. Her hand stayed still this time. Another email mentioned a private dinner with North Star in Miami and a backup aircraft waiting in Fort Lauderdale in case the main Gulfstream became unavailable. Logan had planned for delays. He had planned for questions. He had even planned for Danielle to object. What he had not planned for was Danielle seeing the whole map. "Pull every flight request connected to Pierce Meridian for the next 72 hours, she said. Rachel began typing. "There are 4. The first was Miami to Nassau. The second was Fort Lauderdale to Grand Cayman. The third was a charter from Tampa to Houston. The fourth had no passenger list, only a departure window and a destination in Zurich." Marcus looked at Danielle. He is not just closing a deal. No, she said. He is moving something. Rachel opened the attached cargo declaration. The document listed corporate records, encrypted drives, and original ownership certificates. Danielle felt the final piece fall into place. Logan was not flying to celebrate his future. He was carrying away the proof of how he had stolen it. Her phone lit up with his name. For a moment, nobody spoke. Danielle answered. "Where are you?" Logan asked, his voice sharp. "You left me at an airport. Why does it matter?" A pause followed. Then his tone softened, carefully rehearsed. "Danny, I can explain everything when I get back." She looked at the Zurich flight request on Rachel's screen. "Are you planning to come back?" Logan said nothing. Danielle ended the call. Then she turned to Rachel. "Do not cancel the flights." Marcus frowned. "Why not?" Danielle closed the forged contract. "Because I want him to believe he still has somewhere to go." Danielle did not cancel a single flight. Instead, she asked Rachel to place each one under immediate compliance review. "No personal requests," Danielle said. "No favors. Every decision needs a contract behind it." Rachel nodded and opened the Blue Harbor leasing files. Marcus stood at the end of the conference table, still watching his sister, as if he expected her to fall apart the moment nobody was looking. "You do not have to prove anything to him," he said. Danielle slid the forged agreement into a folder. "This is not about proving something to Logan." "Then what is it about?" She looked at the 4 flight requests glowing on the screen. "Making sure he cannot sell what does not belong to him." The first review showed that the Gulfstream carrying Logan and Sloane was operating under a temporary insurance rider tied to Blue Harbor. The rider required immediate suspension if ownership records were disputed. The second aircraft in Fort Lauderdale had missed a mandatory maintenance filing. The Tampa charter relied on ground services provided by Apex Runway Services, another Monroe-controlled company. Even the Zurich flight required original ownership certificates that Logan had no legal right to remove from the United States. His entire escape plan depended on people continuing to trust the paperwork he had altered. Rachel picked up the phone. "I can notify the insurers now." Danielle stopped her. "Wait until he lands in Miami." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You want him to walk into the meeting first?" "I want North Star sitting across from him when the facts arrive." For the first time that day, Marcus almost smiled. Not because Danielle was seeking revenge, but because he recognized the woman who used to dismantle bad business plans with 3 questions and a spreadsheet. Danielle's phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Sloane. "Logan says you are upset. Please do not interfere with company business because of a private matter." Danielle read it once, then handed the phone to Rachel. "Save that." Marcus shook his head. "She really thinks you are just the wife." Danielle looked toward the windows. Far below, cars moved through downtown Savannah as if nothing in her life had changed. "So did I," she said quietly. That admission hurt more than she expected. For years, she had accepted being introduced as Logan's wife instead of the woman who built his route network. She had let him answer questions meant for her. She had laughed when investors called him brilliant for ideas they first heard at her kitchen table. She told herself love did not need credit. But love was not supposed to erase the person giving it. Rachel's laptop chimed. Logan's aircraft had begun its descent into Miami. Another alert followed seconds later. North Star had moved the closing meeting from a hotel conference room to a private terminal so the group could depart for Nassau immediately after signing. Logan planned to close the deal, board the next flight, and move the original records before anyone could challenge him. "He moved the schedule up," Rachel said. Danielle's pulse quickened, but her voice remained calm. "Send the ownership dispute to Blue Harbor. Notify the insurance carrier. Ask Apex to hold ground service pending verification." Marcus leaned forward. "What about North Star?" Danielle picked up the USB containing the forged files. "Send them everything, but time it for the moment Logan sits down." In Miami, Logan stepped off the Gulfstream wearing the same confident expression he used whenever he believed a room already belonged to him. Sloane walked beside him, checking messages and smiling at the North Star executives waiting near the terminal. Logan adjusted his jacket and whispered, "By tonight, none of this can be undone." Then the ground manager approached. "Mr. Pierce, we have a problem." Logan barely looked at him. "Handle it." The man held out a tablet. "Blue Harbor has disputed your authority over the aircraft, and the insurer has suspended coverage." Logan's smile vanished. Before he could answer, Every phone around the conference table began ringing at once. The first call came from North Star's legal counsel. The second came from the insurance carrier. By the third, Logan was no longer pretending this was a simple paperwork delay. He stood at the end of the conference table with one hand pressed against the back of a leather chair while the North Star executives read the documents arriving on their screens. Sloane's confident smile had disappeared. "What exactly did you tell them?" she asked under her breath. Logan ignored her and turned to the ground manager. "Fuel the backup aircraft." The man shook his head. Apex Runway Services placed the account on hold pending ownership verification. Then use another provider. The airport cannot release the aircraft without active insurance. Logan's jaw tightened. "This is Danielle." One of the North Star attorneys looked up. "Danielle Monroe?" Logan paused. He had spent years making sure her name carried no weight inside Pierce Meridian. Now it was the only name anyone in the room wanted explained. "My wife is upset," he said. "She is trying to interfere with a private transaction." "Your wife?" Sloane repeated, her voice sharper this time. "You told me she had no involvement in the company." Logan turned toward her. "Not now." Across the table, North Star's managing partner closed the purchase agreement. "Mr. Pierce, the documents we received indicate that Blue Harbor owns most of the aircraft listed as company assets. They also show that Apex controls the ground service agreements supporting your routes. Those are standard vendor relationships. Then why did you represent them as assets under your control?" Logan opened his mouth, but his phone rang again. Fort Lauderdale. The second aircraft had been grounded over a missing maintenance filing. Seconds later, the Tampa charter was placed on administrative hold. The room became painfully quiet. Every route Logan had prepared was closing in the exact order Danielle had seen on Rachel's screen. In Savannah, Danielle sat with Marcus and Rachel as status updates arrived one after another. Her coffee remained untouched. She did not celebrate. Each alert brought a strange mix of relief and grief. She had spent years protecting Logan from mistakes, correcting his projections before investors saw them, calling contacts when he missed deadlines. Some part of her still expected to fix this too. Marcus noticed the hesitation in her face. "You can stop," he said. "Nobody would blame you." Danielle looked at the forged signature beside her wedding ring. "That is what I have done our entire marriage. I stopped consequences before they reached him." Rachel turned her laptop toward Danielle. A new file had appeared in the audit. It was a liability transfer agreement created 4 months earlier. If North Star discovered false ownership claims after closing, the debt would move into Monroe Strategic Holdings, an inactive company still registered in Danielle's name. Rachel's voice lowered. "He was not only selling assets he did not own. He was preparing to leave you with the losses." Danielle felt the air leave her lungs. Logan had asked her to sign forms at breakfast 4 months earlier, saying they were routine tax updates. She remembered holding a piece of toast in one hand while he tapped the signature line with a pen. "Right there, Danny. I am already late." She had signed because she trusted him. Now Rachel opened the scanned form. Danielle's real signature sat beneath language that had later been attached to the liability transfer. Marcus swore quietly. This was planned. Danielle's phone rang. "Logan." She let it ring twice before answering. "Fix this," he said without greeting. Behind him, she could hear voices arguing in the Miami terminal. "You are humiliating me in front of investors." Danielle stared at the document carrying her name. "Did you plan to leave me with the debt?" Silence. Then Logan lowered his voice. "You do not understand how these deals work." "I understand exactly how they work. Danielle, listen to me. Release the planes, and we can discuss everything privately." She closed her eyes for 1 second. There it was again. Not an apology. Not the truth. An order disguised as reason. "The planes stay where they are," she said. Logan's voice turned cold. "You will regret making me your enemy." Danielle opened her eyes. "You made that decision before I ever knew there was a fight." She ended the call. Rachel was already reviewing the next file when her expression changed. "There is more," she said. "Logan created an internal record naming you as the person who approved every disputed transaction." Marcus looked at Danielle. "He is going to blame all of it on you." Danielle picked up the USB and slid it into the laptop. "Then we give him a room full of people and let him try." By 6 o'clock that evening, Logan had stopped calling Danielle and started calling everyone around her. He called Marcus twice, Rachel 4 times, and Blue Harbor's legal department so often that they began sending every voicemail directly into the audit file. Danielle listened to none of them. She sat alone at the end of the conference table, reading the internal record that named her as the approving officer on transactions she had never seen. The document was clean, organized, and convincing. Logan had attached old emails, copied her digital signature, and even included notes written in the kind of short, practical language Danielle used at work. "He studied how I write," she said. Rachel looked up from her laptop. "He studied what people would believe about you." That distinction settled heavily in the room. Logan had built his defense around the idea that Danielle would stay quiet. He knew she disliked public attention. He knew she avoided conflict when a private conversation might solve it. Most of all, he knew she had spent years protecting their marriage from embarrassment. He had mistaken her decency for permission. Marcus placed a fresh cup of coffee beside her. "Northstar wants an emergency meeting tomorrow morning in Atlanta. Their board, Blue Harbor, Apex, Logan, and both legal teams." Danielle nodded. "Does Logan know I will be there?" "No. He thinks Rachel is representing the ownership group." "Keep it that way." Rachel turned the laptop toward her. "There is one problem. If he repeats these allegations in front of the board, he may create enough confusion to delay the investigation. He does not need to prove you approve the transactions. He only needs to make them uncertain." Danielle leaned back and looked at the ceiling. Logan had always been good in a room. He knew when to lower his voice, when to sound wounded, when to make confidence look like honesty. During their marriage, she had watched him sell weak ideas to skeptical investors simply by making them feel foolish for questioning him. Tomorrow, he would do the same thing with her life. "Then we do not argue with him," she said. "We let him talk." Marcus frowned. "You want him to accuse you?" "I want him comfortable." Rachel understood first. People reveal more when they think they control the story. Danielle opened the USB and began sorting the files into a timeline. Every altered contract, every forwarded email, every flight request, every message between Logan and Sloane. One thread stopped her. It was dated 3 months earlier. Logan had written, "Once Northstar closes, Danielle will sign whatever is left. She always does when I tell her it protects the company." Sloane had replied, "And if she starts asking questions?" Logan's answer came less than a minute later. "She will not. She still thinks this is a marriage." Danielle stared at the screen without moving. Marcus reached for the laptop, but she stopped him. "No, I need to read it." The words hurt because they were not cruel in a dramatic way. They were casual, certain, written by a man who believed her love made her predictable. Rachel printed the thread and added it to the meeting folder. "This proves intent." "It proves arrogance," Danielle said. "Intent is what we make him confirm tomorrow." Across the state line, Logan sat in a hotel suite near Miami International Airport, his jacket thrown over a chair and his tie loosened. Sloane stood near the window with her arms folded. "You said Danielle had no authority." "She does not." "Then why are 3 aircraft grounded?" Logan poured himself a glass of water and did not drink it. "Her family is panicking. They are trying to scare Northstar." Sloane watched him carefully. "Did you use her signature?" Logan's silence lasted half a second too long. "Everything was authorized." "That was not my question." He turned toward her. "Tomorrow, I will explain that Danielle approved the structure and changed her mind after I ended the marriage. The board will see exactly what this is." "And what is it?" Sloane asked. Logan's expression hardened. A bitter wife trying to punish her husband. Sloane looked away, but her phone was recording inside her purse. Logan never noticed. He was too busy rehearsing the lie he planned to tell in Atlanta. What he did not know was that by morning, Danielle would not be the only woman in the room carrying proof. Logan arrived at Northstar Aviation Capital's Atlanta office 10 minutes early, wearing a navy suit and the calm expression of a man who believed preparation could replace truth. Sloane walked beside him, quieter than usual, one hand resting near the purse that held the recording from the night before. Inside the boardroom, representatives from Northstar, Blue Harbor, and Apex Runway Services sat around a long walnut table. Rachel Coleman was already there with several folders arranged in front of her. Logan gave her a thin smile. "I assume Danielle sent you to clean up her overreaction." Rachel did not return the smile. "I am here to review the record." Logan took his seat and began before anyone invited him to speak. He described Danielle as emotional, confused, and angry about the end of their marriage. He claimed she had approved the financing structure, understood every liability transfer, and only challenged the agreements after he asked for a divorce. "This is personal retaliation," he said. "Nothing more." Northstar's managing partner folded his hands. "Who designed the original route network for Pierce Meridian?" Logan answered without hesitation. "I did." "Who introduced the company to Blue Harbor?" "My relationships did." "Who authorized the use of Monroe Strategic Holdings?" Logan leaned back. "Danielle did. She handled that side of the business." Rachel opened a folder. "You just said she had no meaningful role in the company." Logan paused. "She helped with paperwork. That is different from leadership." The door behind him opened. Danielle stepped into the room wearing a dark blue suit, her expression steady despite the sharp pull in her chest when Logan turned and saw her. For the first time since the airport, he looked uncertain. "Danny," he said softly, as if they were alone. "This does not need to become public." Danielle took the empty chair across from him. "You made it public when you put my name on documents I never approved." Logan glanced at the board members, then recovered. "You signed the forms." Rachel placed the original tax document beside the later liability agreement. She signed this page. The liability language was attached afterward. Logan's attorney leaned forward. "That is an accusation, not proof." Danielle inserted the USB into the conference system. Emails appeared on the large screen, followed by timestamps, document revisions, and messages showing Logan requesting access to her archived signature files. His face remained still, but his fingers tightened around his pen. Danielle looked directly at him. "Did you use my signature to move company debt into my name? You knew we were restructuring." "That was not my question." "Danielle, you are upset. Did you use my signature?" Logan looked around the table, searching for a safer answer. "I acted in the company's best interest." Northstar's attorney spoke quietly. "That sounds like a yes." Logan pushed back from the table. "This entire meeting is being manipulated by her family." Then Sloane stood. Every head turned toward her. Logan's expression changed. "Sit down." She placed her phone on the table. "No." Her voice shook, but she continued. "Last night, I asked whether Danielle approved the transactions. Logan told me he would blame her because the board would believe she was a bitter wife." Logan stared at her. "You are lying." Sloane tapped the screen. His own voice filled the room. "Tomorrow, I will explain that Danielle approved the structure and changed her mind after I ended the marriage. The board will see exactly what this is. A bitter wife trying to punish her husband." Silence followed the recording. Logan looked at Danielle, but whatever apology he might have offered never came. Northstar's managing partner closed the contract. "The acquisition is terminated. Effective immediately." Blue Harbor suspended every lease. Apex canceled all service agreements under Logan's authority. Then Rachel slid a final document across the table. "The board of Pierce Meridian has called an emergency vote to remove you as chief executive officer pending investigation." Logan looked down at the page, then back at Danielle. "You planned all of this." Danielle shook her head. "No, you planned it. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." The vote passed before noon. Logan walked into the room believing he only had to defeat his wife's version of the truth. He walked out without his company, without his deal, and without the woman who had agreed to carry his lie. But outside the boardroom, he made one final call, and the threat on the other end would force Danielle to choose between keeping her victory and protecting hundreds of employees who had no idea their jobs were about to disappear. The call Logan made outside the boardroom went to a lender Danielle had never heard him mention. By the time she returned to the conference table, Rachel was already reading the notice on her laptop. "Pierce Meridian has a 48-hour liquidity trigger," she said. "If Logan is removed as chief executive officer, the lender can demand immediate repayment." Marcus looked over her shoulder. "How much?" Rachel's expression tightened. $28 million. Danielle felt the victory drain out of the room. Pierce Meridian did not have that kind of cash. If the lender enforced the clause, payroll would freeze, aircraft contracts would collapse, and more than 300 employees could lose their jobs before the end of the week. Logan had hidden the loan inside a private financing agreement and tied it directly to his position. He had built the company so that removing him would hurt everyone beneath him. "He knew the vote was possible," Danielle said. Rachel nodded. "This is a poison pill." Marcus closed the conference room door. "Monroe Aeronautics can cover the debt." Danielle looked at him. "And then everyone will say my family took over the company the moment Logan was pushed out." "Let them." "No. The employees deserve stability, not another power fight. Her phone rang. Logan's name appeared on the screen. Danielle answered and put him on speaker. "Put me back in charge," he said, and the lender stands down. There was no apology in his voice, only confidence. "You tied 300 jobs to your title," Danielle said. "I protected the company from people like your family. You protected yourself. Same difference now." Marcus leaned toward the phone. "You are finished, Logan." Logan ignored him. "Danielle, you have until tomorrow morning. Reinstate me, release the leases, and tell Northstar this was a misunderstanding. Otherwise, payroll stops Friday." Danielle stared at the employees listed in the financial report. Pilots, dispatchers, mechanics, customer service agents. People who had never been invited into Logan's private rooms, but would pay for what happened there. "I will call you back," she said. "Do not take too long." The line went dead. For the next 6 hours, Danielle worked with Rachel, Marcus, and Pierce Meridian's finance team. They searched loan agreements, side letters, amendments, and insurance schedules. Near midnight, Rachel found a clause buried in an appendix. The lender could demand repayment after Logan's removal, but only if no qualified successor assumed operational control within 48 hours. Marcus read it twice. "You qualify." Danielle shook her head. "I have not worked inside the company for years." "You designed the network," Rachel said. "You hold active aviation management credentials. Blue Harbor and Apex already recognize your authority. Legally, you qualify more than Logan did." Danielle understood the trap in front of her. To protect the employees, she would have to step into the position Logan had spent years telling the world she was never capable of holding. The next morning, Logan arrived at the mediation office expecting surrender. His attorney placed reinstatement papers on the table. "Sign these," Logan said, "and we can stop making this ugly." Danielle sat across from him with the wedding ring she had removed in Savannah resting beside the divorce agreement. "I am not reinstating you." Logan smiled. "Then you are firing hundreds of people to punish me." Rachel placed the succession filing on the table. Logan's smile faded. Danielle had been appointed interim chief executive officer less than an hour earlier. The lender had accepted her credentials. Payroll was protected. The liquidity trigger was canceled. Every employee would report to work as usual. Logan looked from the document to Danielle. "You took my company." "No," she said. "I kept you from taking everyone down with you." She pushed the divorce agreement toward him. It required him to surrender all executive claims, return improperly transferred assets, cooperate with the investigation, and contribute his remaining equity to an employee protection fund. Logan's voice dropped. "After everything we built?" Danielle looked at him for a long moment. "I built beside you. You just made sure nobody saw me." His pen hovered above the signature line. For the first time, he had no flight waiting, no investor to impress, and no one left to carry the blame. Then Rachel's phone buzzed with one final message from federal investigators. They had recovered the encrypted drive Logan planned to send to Zurich, and inside it was evidence that could change the terms of his future entirely. The encrypted drive did not contain one mistake. It contained years of them. Investigators found altered ownership records, hidden lender agreements, private transfers, and messages showing that Logan had planned to move company data overseas before Northstar could review it. By the end of the week, his executive credentials were suspended, his remaining authority was gone, and every disputed account was placed under legal supervision. Logan signed the divorce agreement in silence. When he reached the final page, he looked at Danielle as if he were still waiting for the woman who used to rescue him from every consequence. "Are you really going to let this be how we end?" he asked. Danielle looked at the man she had loved, and for one painful moment, she saw the younger version of him holding 2 cups of bad coffee beside a vending machine. That memory was real. So was everything he had done afterward. "We did not end today," she said. "We ended every time you chose what you could take from me over what we were supposed to build together." Logan lowered his eyes. Danielle did not need him to admit she was right. She had spent too many years waiting for his recognition. Rachel collected the signed papers, and Marcus quietly opened the door. Danielle left her wedding ring on the table. She did not throw it away. She did not need a dramatic gesture. It was simply something that no longer belonged on her hand. The months that followed were not easy. Pierce Meridian had damaged contracts, frightened clients, and employees who wondered whether the company would survive. Danielle arrived before sunrise most mornings and stayed until the dispatch board showed every crew safely accounted for. She met mechanics in hangars, listened to pilots in break rooms, and sat with customer service teams who had learned about Logan's removal from television. She did not pretend to have every answer. "I cannot promise this will be painless," she told them. "But I can promise nobody in this company will be treated as disposable again." Slowly, trust returned. Danielle restructured the debt, restored the grounded routes that met safety standards, and created an employee protection fund using the equity Logan had surrendered. She also started a training program for Black women entering aviation planning, finance, and operations. She remembered too well what it felt like to be the only woman in the room whose work was visible but whose name was not. 1 year after the morning at the Savannah terminal, Danielle returned to the same airport. The glass doors looked smaller than she remembered. Marcus stood beside her near the gate, holding 2 coffees. "You sure about this?" he asked. Danielle smiled. For the first time in a long time, a news report played silently above the waiting area. Logan's investigation had ended with financial penalties, a long-term ban from executive aviation roles, and a court order requiring full restitution. Danielle glanced at the screen, then looked away. His downfall no longer felt like her destination. The gate agent approached. "Miss Monroe, your aircraft is ready. Where are you headed?" Danielle looked through the window at the runway where she had once stood with a suitcase, believing she had been abandoned at the edge of her own life. "Somewhere I chose," she said. As the plane lifted into the morning light, Danielle finally understood something Logan never had. Power was not the ability to control where other people could go. It was the freedom to stop letting them decide where you belonged. Some people leave you behind because they believe your life cannot move without them. But sometimes being left behind is not the end of the journey. Sometimes it is the first quiet moment when you finally choose your own direction.